Probably my ideals and my values are different than most people's, so my morals are different.
They wore rhinestone suits like reflective armor and pointed their steel-string guitars like pistols, yet behind every chart-topping yodel of the golden era lurked drama so combustible it could light a cornfield at midnight. Forget the sanitized story that drifts across Sunday afternoon oldies hours. The real Nashville circuit was a traveling soap opera, where bar fights decided set lists, record deals were negotiated in parking lots, and careers collapsed because of one loose tongue at a roadside diner. Tonight we hitchhike through that back alley history, drifting from prison cells to Opry spotlights, from boardroom betrayals to motel confessions made under flickering neon. By the final note, you'll know why some artists were cheered on stage and cursed the second the curtains closed. You'll hear about envelopes burned on live television, about backstage lawsuits served between choruses, about rants that lost multi-million-dollar jingles in 60 seconds flat. And you'll see that the same turbulence that wrecked friendships also forged stone-cold classics blaring out of every dusty jukebox from Bakersfield to Birmingham. Strap in, keep your drink steady, and remember, in Music City, nothing is ever just a simple song or silence. Our first detour pulls off the interstate and straight into the penitentiary yard where three future legends tested their toughest material on guards who could not care less. David Allan Coe spent real years behind razor wire for robbery, then emerged bragging about knife fights and pen pals, decorating his next records with lyrics so vulgar and so riddled with racial slurs that mainstream radio slammed the door. He answered the ban with louder guitars and sold bootlegs from the trunk of a hearse, earning outlaw immortality. Johnny Paycheck, meanwhile, barked, "Take this job and shove it," then shoved a real pistol into a bar patron's chest and landed in prison, discovering that hard time is cheaper than a PR campaign. Merle Haggard caught the show from San Quentin's bleachers, claiming 17 escape attempts before a governor's pardon turned his rap sheet into poetic license. Together they proved bars, whether steel or honky-tonk, could amplify a legend louder than any amplifier. Not every scandal needed a jailhouse address. Some detonated under television lighting hotter than a forge. Jerry Lee Lewis blew up his own trajectory when journalists uncovered that his new bride was both his cousin and barely 13, a revelation that sent promoters sprinting for exits while he hollered about biblical precedents and hammered piano keys like they owed him an apology. Years later, another fire touched the Country Music Association stage when Charlie Rich, sweating bourbon and resentment, pulled a lighter from his sequined pocket and torched John Denver's winning envelope on live network television, protesting what he called plastic pop. The audience gasped. Producers cut to commercial. Rich stumbled away, career singed beyond repair. And then there was George Jones, the velvet voice who could make heartbreak sound holy, but who routinely skipped shows after joyriding lawnmowers to the liquor store. Fans began calling him no-show, venues posted cash bonds, and yet every time he actually appeared, the sheer ache in his phrasing convinced listeners to forgive again. Their wreckage sold newspapers, but also rewrote the rulebook for live controversy forever. Money, however, breeds haters faster than whiskey breeds hangovers, and few guarded the till harder than singers who billed themselves as voices of the working man. Buck Owens smiled beside a rubber chicken puppet on national television, yet on payday his bandmates learned the Bakersfield King had slashed their salaries while funneling publishing royalties into side companies he alone controlled. Conway Twitty draped himself in velvet and crooned odes to fidelity, even as accountants alleged he shuffled royalties through labyrinthine corporations that left co-writers begging for crumbs. Porter Wagoner, resplendent in rhinestone wagon wheel suits, welcomed Dolly Parton onto his show, then sued her for millions when she dared to leave, claiming her future hits belonged to him like cattle on an old deed. And Hank Snow, the Canadian import who sang of open ranges, quietly blocked emerging artists, Elvis among them, from Opry bookings, fearing the new kid's hip shake would eclipse his own polished yodel. Contracts became weapons, friendships became collateral, and every handshake, hid a lawyer's grin. In Nashville's counting rooms, harmony meant aligning decimal points, not voices. When tour buses rolled out at dawn, the loudest sound was the rustle of unpaid invoices tucked into guitar cases and hearts turning colder. While lawyers traded letters, the women of country sharpened lyrics into daggers and sliced through the boys' club with melodies nobody could ignore. Loretta Lynn stomped onto stage in a floor-length gown and sang praise for birth control pills, triggering sermons, radio bans, and a furious letter campaign led by deacons who'd secretly bought the single. Tammy Wynette countered with public tales of heartbreak, but insiders whispered she choreographed every fainting spell and hospital stay to win sympathy during contract negotiations, a strategy that kept her both chart-topping and mistrusted. Patsy Cline, patron saint of raw truth, backed Lynn in daylight, yet scolded bandmates who flubbed a note sometimes mid-show, leaving stunned musicians sweating under spotlights while she steadied the mic like a judge with a gavel. Lynn Anderson arrived bearing roses and a reputation for backstage ice, once refusing to walk on until her chiffon matched the color of the curtain and threatening to fire any roadie who dared cough during soundcheck. Their voices cracked glass ceilings, but their iron wills cracked friendships. Each encore left another rumor wilting in the heat. Country's queens learned the crown came fitted with thorns, and every thorn drew a headline fans devoured with relish. Politics and powder keg tempers soon turned concert halls into debate stages. Hank Williams Jr. rolled onto morning television, compared a sitting president to Europe's darkest dictator, and watched corporate sponsors vanish faster than empty beer cans from a tailgate. Waylon Jennings faced federal agents in his studio, a packet of amphetamines the centerpiece. Yet when the paperwork misprinted his name, he quipped into the microphone, cut a joke track about red tape, and walked free, emerging even more mythical. Farron Young cultivated charm until whiskey switched it off. He once grabbed a local DJ by the collar live on air because the station had rotated his single only twice that hour. Later, in a crowded theater, Young heckled a young singer from the wings, then marched on stage to show the kid how it's done, effectively hijacking the show and ensuring both applause and outrage. For these men, rebellion wasn't branding, it was reflex. Every canceled endorsement became proof they wouldn't kneel. Every angry headline another badge sewn onto a denim vest reeking of stale smoke and stubborn pride. Critics called them reckless, but ticket lines stretched around arenas, proving indignation and curiosity can fit side by side in the same bar stool. If the men rocked boats, the tabloids claimed the women capsized whole fleets. Tanya Tucker was barely old enough to drive when gossip pages chronicled her champagne tantrums, sports car joyrides, and romances spanning enough decades to fill a history syllabus. Once, after a lover arrived late to a backstage rendezvous, witnesses swear she hurled his gold record like a frisbee, embedding it in a drywall partition and autographing the dent with lipstick. Jeannie C. Riley tasted overnight success with Harper Valley PTA and promptly scorched bridges by dubbing Nashville's establishment geriatrics in bolo ties during a televised interview, a quip still recited in industry seminars on what not to do. K.T. Oslin entered the fray older and battle-hardened, calling the scene a boys' club of fragile egos, then refusing to smile politely when award producers asked her to shorten acceptance speeches. Their missteps and mic drops sold magazines by the crate, yet each single they released climbed anyway, suggesting controversy might be the surest harmony in town. Every rumor, every lover's quarrel, every smashed hotel mirror became rocket fuel for the next chorus blaring from somebody's pickup. Broken glass glittered like confetti, and the chorus always arrived right on cue again. Beyond the spotlights, power simmered in shadowy wings where gatekeepers decided who even received a microphone. Bill Monroe, hailed as the father of bluegrass, kept a ledger detailing exactly how many notes each bandmate played. Overstep his count and find yourself unemployed by sunrise. Tom T. Hall smiled for meet and greets, yet could freeze out a peer with one frosty-eyed nod. Writers whispered that if Hall dismissed your latest line, publishers wouldn't return your calls for months. Roy Acuff, dubbed the king of the Opry, guided tourists through backstage hallways by day and guarded tradition like a drawbridge by night, quietly vetoing performers whose genre bending threatened the old tapestry. These three seldom raised voices in public, but their silent vetoes shaped careers more brutally than any fistfight. Ambition in their kingdom meant navigating invisible minefields of etiquette, ego, and elder approval. Stumble once and your tour van doubled as your retirement home. Country music loves underdog stories, yet its upper crust was patrolled by silent sentries who reminded dreamers that every fairy tale requires a gate. Many young hopefuls learned the lesson the hard way, driving home in tears while the same masters sipped coffee, muttering that tough love kept the genre pure. Speeding past the rule keepers came Marty Robbins, a crooner by day and adrenaline addict by twilight, trading cowboy boots for racing gloves at desert speedways. He once barreled off the track in a fiery spin, crawled out grinning, and flew overnight to a recording session, where he berated the engineer for mixing the steel guitar 2 decibels too low, flipping a sofa for emphasis. His volatility found a spiritual cousin in Johnny Cash, who set a California forest ablaze while hunting armadillos, gulped pill bottles like Tic Tacs, then turned around and sang hymns that could make sinners sob. Even presidents took notice. One invited Cash to the White House, only to wince when the man in black chose a protest song. Merle Haggard observed the chaos from a calmer bar stool, yet his own rap sheet, burglaries, jailbreak attempts, and a last-minute gubernatorial pardon fed every line of Mama Tried. Listeners forgave because the records delivered brutal honesty wrapped in Telecaster shimmer, proving redemption can be marketed if the hook is good enough. Between crashes, crimes, and choruses, the merch tables never once emptied. As the 70s bled into the 80s, the genre fractured like old barnwood, its splinters shooting in every imaginable direction. Traditionalists held bluegrass picnics on courthouse lawns, where Bill Monroe still showed up unannounced, mandolin in hand, ready to outpick musicians 1/3 his age just to prove supremacy. At night, the same pickers snuck into neon dance halls to groove to Owens-inspired Bakersfield twang, then rose early to mime along with Conway Twitty ballads on syndicated television, terrified of angering any camp. Station managers complained that program logs looked like culture wars set to shuffle. Meanwhile, Nashville's label executives discovered that public outrage could be monetized with frightening efficiency. A single on-air scandal meant free headlines across 2 time zones, and every protest letter mailed by a church group seemed to sell another 10,000 units in the next state over. Marketing meetings began with the question, who can we safely offend before lunch? Artists who once fought censorship suddenly found themselves nudged to stoke controversy on purpose. Prove you're authentic, shake the tree, watch the fruit drop. Country's rough edges stopped being liabilities and became the very brand investors sponsored. If morality panicked, accountants merely grinned behind their stacked royalty statements. All that tension finally erupted one autumn evening backstage at an awards rehearsal, an incident still swapped like folklore by tour bus drivers. Hank Williams Jr., fresh from losing a lucrative football anthem, arrived wearing a camo cap and a mood sharp enough to shave bark. Charlie Rich, nursing equal parts pride and Kentucky liquor, spotted him across the equipment cases and joked about burning a welcome sign onto Junior's hat. Stagehands swear the lighter flicked, Junior's forehead met the older man's nose with a thud. Cymbal stands crashed in domino fashion, and somewhere in the chaos, George Jones tried to act referee before deciding the concession stand offered safer ground. By the time security separated the legends, Rich's blazer smelled of bourbon, kerosene, and bruised ego, while Junior strutted away claiming victory, even as a makeup artist dabbed blood from his eyebrow. Reporters pieced together half-truths, managers issued bland apologies, but ticket sales for both men spiked the next week. Violence had become the new publicity junket. Every punch guaranteed a headline. Every headline doubled as a promotional jingle humans couldn't resist humming. Country, it seemed, now measured success not in notes hit, but in chaos efficiently monetized nationwide. While legends wrestled in dressing rooms, fans gobbled up every rumor like kettle corn, proving that country audiences enjoy morality tales seasoned with just enough scandal to taste forbidden. Rural households that outwardly condemned Tammy Wynette's divorces still bought the box sets, hiding them behind hymnals on the living room shelf. Truckers who jeered newspaper articles about David Allan Coe's stage talk kept his 8-track looping through overnight halls because nothing else matched the exhaustion of midnight miles. Even church picnics booked George Jones' tribute acts, though the kids learning guitar were told to imitate the voice, not the vanished bar tabs. Country music occupies that uniquely American crossroads where sin and salvation share the same parking lot. You walk in for forgiveness, but the jukebox tempts you toward another round. Industry veterans understood this duality and fed it carefully, alternating radio singles about heartbreak with publicity stunts about broken bottles, giving listeners the catharsis of confession without demanding they change their weekend habits. In truth, the genre's greatest duet might always have been between disgrace and redemption, sung in perfect fifths by artists whose real addiction was staying unforgettable. Forgettable singers behaved, unforgettable icons misbehaved, and history honored the latter. As vinyl faded into cassettes and arenas gave way to multi-purpose domes, a new wave of polished performers attempted image control, but the blueprint had already been set in rougher times. Managers studied the mistakes of Waylon Jennings and Merle Haggard, then recreated them in safer, camera-ready doses, booking rehabilitated stars for charity telethons and pairing them with younger acts to soften reputations. Documentaries reframed broken marriages as learning curves, arrests as colorful detours, and onstage meltdowns as proof of raw authenticity. By the millennium, scandal management was an academic discipline inside every label office, complete with spreadsheets predicting outrage duration measured in social media half-lives. The pioneers laughed from retirement ranches, realizing their worst moments were now classroom curriculum. None laughed harder than Tanya Tucker, who watched a biopic sanitize her most reckless escapades into gentle, rebellious phases, and quipped that Hollywood had taken her ashtray and replaced it with vanilla-scented candles. The world believed it, of course, because generations raised on tabloid thunder eventually crave quieter myths. But old bootlegs still circulate, raw and hissing, reminding anyone who listens that the original show was louder, darker, and far more human. In that grit, the true melody continues to echo. So when the jukebox flickers in a roadside diner and a familiar steel riff kicks in, listen closer. Behind the smile of every poster boy and the grace of every rhinestone queen, you hear cursing in a hallway, smell burnt contracts, and feel a crowd choosing between boos and begging for an encore. Country music was never polite. It is a street fight disguised as 3 chords you can dance to. Those minutes compress decades of betrayals, addictions, protests, reconciliations, and feuds still brewing behind award show banter. The microphone is a witness stand, the lights an interrogation lamp, each chorus sworn testimony from artists who sinned boldly and sang bolder. When the note fades, ask yourself, was that comfort or confession? Either way, you paid the cover charge, and the legends have turned curiosity into gold. Their ghosts grin beneath neon signs, proving that in this genre, controversy is currency, melody is alibi, and immortality costs nothing less than candor. So next time you hum along, remember the laughter, the brawls, the night drives, and know you are trading coins for chaos, one verse at a time under that neon glow.